The moment Olivia stepped into the grand ballroom of the Whitmore estate wearing a faded blue dress that looked 2 sizes too old, the room went silent for half a second before whispers began floating through the air like poison. Crystal chandeliers sparkled above polished marble floors, expensive perfumes mixed with the scent of champagne, and wealthy guests in designer suits stared at her as if she didn't belong there. But what hurt the most was not the judgment from strangers. It was the cold expression on the face of Margaret Lawson, the mother of the man she was about to marry. Olivia stood there holding a tiny gift bag in trembling hands while her future in-laws looked at her like she was an embarrassment they wished had never arrived. None of them knew the truth. None of them knew that the quiet woman they were mocking owned one of the largest hotel chains in America. And none of them were prepared for what would happen before the night ended. If you believe kindness matters more than money, take a second to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share this story with someone who believes in second chances, and subscribe to the channel for more emotional stories that touch the heart. Olivia Bennet had spent most of her life hiding behind simplicity. Growing up in a small town outside Nashville, Tennessee, she learned early that people treated you differently once they discovered you had money. After inheriting Bennet Hospitality Group from her late grandfather at just 28 years old, she watched friendships become fake and relationships turn transactional overnight. Men who once ignored her suddenly wanted expensive dinners. People who barely knew her acted like family. So when she met Ethan Lawson at a bookstore cafe in Chicago 6 months earlier, she never told him who she really was. She introduced herself simply as Olivia, a freelance interior designer who loved old novels and rainy afternoons. Ethan fell in love with her kindness, her warmth, and the way she listened to people without judging them. For the first time in years, Olivia felt seen as a human being instead of a bank account. When Ethan proposed during a quiet winter evening near Lake Michigan, Olivia cried harder than she expected. She truly believed she had finally found a family she could belong to. But Ethan's parents insisted on hosting a formal engagement celebration at their massive estate in Connecticut before announcing the wedding publicly. Olivia wanted to tell Ethan the truth before the party, but fear held her back. She needed to know whether his family would accept her if they believed she had nothing. The answer came faster and more painfully than she imagined. From the second Olivia entered the ballroom, Margaret Lawson's smile looked forced. Richard Lawson, Ethan's father, barely shook her hand before asking what kind of freelance work she actually did. Ethan's younger sister Vanessa scanned Olivia's modest outfit and laughed softly behind her champagne glass. Olivia could feel the judgment growing heavier every minute. Guests whispered about her cheap dress. Someone assumed she was part of the catering staff. Another woman openly asked whether Ethan was experimenting with charity work. Ethan tried to stay close to Olivia throughout the evening, but business partners and relatives constantly pulled him away. Every time he disappeared into another conversation, the cruelty around Olivia intensified. Margaret invited her into a smaller sitting room filled with wealthy women wearing diamonds worth more than most homes. Olivia sat quietly while the women discussed luxury vacations, private schools, and designer brands. Then Margaret turned toward her with a smile sharp enough to cut glass and asked how someone, without a stable career, planned to contribute to Ethan's future. Olivia felt the room closing around her. But the women exchanged amused glances. Vanessa leaned back in her chair and coldly remarked that love didn't pay mortgage bills or maintain social status. Another woman joked that Ethan must enjoy saving broken girls. The laughter that followed burned through Olivia's chest like fire. Still, Olivia remained calm. She remembered her grandfather's words from years earlier, the true measure of people appears when they think you have nothing to offer them. Later that evening, things became even worse. During dinner, Olivia accidentally overheard Richard Lawson speaking privately with Ethan near the balcony doors. Richard warned his son that marrying a poor woman would destroy their family reputation. He said people like Olivia only looked for security and opportunity. Ethan defended her passionately, insisting she was the kindest person he had ever known, but his father refused to listen. Olivia stood frozen behind the hallway corner, tears silently rolling down her cheeks while listening to strangers define her worth by her clothes. For the first time since meeting Ethan, she wondered if love alone could survive a family determined to destroy it. The night reached its breaking point when Margaret publicly humiliated Olivia in front of nearly every guest at the party. Standing near the center of the ballroom, Margaret held up Olivia's small engagement gift. A handmade photo album filled with pictures and memories from Ethan and Olivia's relationship. Instead of appreciating the thoughtful gesture, Margaret laughed and announced that she hadn't seen a homemade present since middle school art class. Several guests chuckled awkwardly while Olivia stood motionless, her face pale with humiliation. Margaret then suggested that perhaps Olivia wasn't accustomed to high society expectations. The room fell painfully silent. Ethan immediately stepped forward, furious at his mother's cruelty, but before he could speak, something unexpected happened. A tall man in a black suit suddenly entered the ballroom with two assistants behind him. His expression changed the moment he saw Olivia standing there in tears. Without hesitation, he walked directly across the room and respectfully addressed her as Miss Bennet. The ballroom went quiet. Confusion spread across the guests' faces as the man apologized for arriving late and informed Olivia that the board members from Bennet Hospitality had finalized the acquisition paperwork she approved earlier that afternoon, a business deal worth nearly $400 million. You could almost hear people stop breathing. Margaret's champagne glass nearly slipped from her hand. Richard Lawson stared in complete disbelief. Vanessa's face drained of color. Around the ballroom, whispers exploded into shocked murmurs as guests began recognizing the name Bennet Hospitality Group, the luxury hotel empire featured regularly in business magazines across America. Olivia slowly wiped her tears and looked around the room at the same people who had mocked her only moments earlier. But there was no arrogance in her expression. No revenge. Only sadness. She calmly explained that she had hidden her identity because she wanted to know whether Ethan's family would value character more than wealth. She admitted she could have arrived in designer gowns and jewelry worth millions, but she wanted to be accepted for who she truly was. Instead, she discovered how quickly people become cruel when they believe someone is beneath them. Ethan looked heartbroken. Not because Olivia was wealthy, but because his family had wounded the woman he loved so deeply. Then something happened no one expected. Margaret began to cry. The proud, intimidating woman who had spent the entire night humiliating Olivia suddenly broke down in front of everyone. She admitted that she grew up poor herself and spent decades obsessing over status because she feared returning to the life she escaped. Somewhere along the way, she forgot how painful judgment could feel. Richard lowered his head in shame, unable to even look at Olivia. The ballroom no longer felt glamorous. Beneath the chandeliers and expensive suits stood broken people realizing how ugly pride could become. Olivia could have walked away that night. She had every reason to. But instead, she quietly walked toward Margaret and handed her the handmade photo album again. She told her that families are not built through wealth or perfection. They are built through humility, forgiveness, and the courage to change. Margaret hugged Olivia while crying uncontrollably. Months later, Ethan and Olivia were married in a small lakeside ceremony in Vermont surrounded by close friends and family. There were no reporters, no extravagant headlines, and no obsession with status. Margaret personally helped decorate the venue herself, and the handmade photo album sat beside the wedding cake as a reminder of the night everything changed. But Olivia never forgot the lesson that evening taught her. Money can impress people, but kindness reveals who truly deserves a place in your life. Before this story ends, comment below and tell us, do you think people show their real character when they believe someone is poor? And if this story touched your heart even a little, please like the video, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe for more emotional stories about love, kindness, forgiveness, and second chances. Because sometimes the people treated as worthless are carrying hearts more valuable than anything money could ever buy.